This video is going to help you talk you through sections 8.3, exercises 8.10 and 8.11. We will come back to this slide as a review, but we're going to talk about the constructors, default and parameterized, using the this keyword, and using private static final variables. So if we take a look at our code for the body class, that's the class that we are going to look at. And if we open up our code window over here, I've added a new body to the world and I'm going to inspect it. When I inspect it, the mass is set at 300, and if I inspect the velocity variable here, it has a direction of 0 and a length of 1. Remember, our length is like our speed. All of those values, the 300, the 0, and the 1, are created here in the default constructor. The 20 is the size, and size is used to fill an oval right here. And the default color is just the default color. So which in this case happens to be yellow. So if I take a look at this, what they want us to do is take a look at your constructors. The default constructor, which has no parameters, actually uses a this keyword, and then it has 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. Those 4 arguments go into these parameters. So it actually is calling the parameterized constructor. The this keyword refers to the current object. So it's talking about the current body. So if I go over here and I create a new body, and I use the this keyword, it refers to this object. So if I inspect this, because I'm using the default, I should have the same values here, 300, and if I were to investigate inside here, 0 and 1 as well. And so that's what the default constructor does. But the default constructor calls the parameterized constructor. The activity wants us to delete the this keyword in your parameterized constructor. When it uses this, just like the this in the default constructor called or worked with the current object, this dot mass is working with the current class level variable here. So if I delete that and then we compile it and we create a new body, and I look at and I inspect it, I now get, I think I didn't click on the right thing, inspect, we now have a mass of 0, which we know is not what we were expecting because we were supposed to get a mass of 300. And so it makes a difference here. If I don't call the current object's mass, it's going to not use those default values that are sent in. So I need to use this keyword here to differentiate between the mass as a new variable and the current variable for mass that the object is using. The last thing that they have you look at in this particular set of exercises is this keyword here, or this line of code, these 2 lines of code actually, where they create a private static final variable. And private means it's not going to have access to the entire world. We do that with all of our instance fields. Is a good practice in order to keep them from being changed accidentally. Static makes it a class level variable that's accessible to anything in the class. And final makes it a constant. A constant is a value that cannot change while the code is being executed. If I were to try to change the value of gravity somewhere in my code, let's say for example where we need to use gravity, I'm not sure where it's used, like right here. So if I try to, let's say I want to change gravity. Gravity, by the way, in this application isn't the constant for gravity that we use in science. It's just an arbitrary value that they use in this program. So if I say 4.0 9, for example, and I try to change that and I compile, I should get an error message. We will see what happens. Maybe if I try to run it, it'll give me an error message. Create a new body, and it is not producing an error message, which is kind of interesting because it should. I should not be able to override or change that value of gravity because it is a constant. We are seeing an error message here now. It says cannot assign a value to the final variable gravity. I did make a change, but I'm going to put it back in. I removed the keyword static, and then I'm going to go back and we'll take a look at it and see what that does. But we still get the error message. I'm going to hit compile, and so we are getting an error message, cannot assign a value to the final version of gravity. I think, though, interestingly enough, it ran before, but maybe that was just because I didn't reset it. So it is not going to let me execute that code unless I take that line out. And so we have fixed that, and I can now create a new body. So a constant variable cannot be changed, and all constants variables are by industry standard named with capital letters. We call that a convention, is the word I was trying to think of. So this is a convention, and so gravity is a constant, and by convention it is named with capital letters. And likewise, I would name this, should be named with all capital letters to follow that. This is the textbook code. I'm not going to change that right now, but that's what I would do if I were creating this from scratch. And so that is your overview for Chapter 8. If I go back to our PowerPoint here and we take a look at the review, we looked at the default constructor, which has no parameter, a parameterized constructor, which had 4 parameters, and the default constructor used the this keyword in order to call the parameterized constructor. This dot mass, assigned a mass, is we cannot delete the this here, otherwise the variables do not get set correctly. And then lastly, when we're using private static final, you are creating a variable, a constant that's shared between all actors. So any actor of the body class will have that variable accessible. And it's also final, makes it a constant so it can't be changed throughout the entire program.